What is up, my friends? Welcome to part 2 of the decoupled flight video. We're heading down to Daymar with our other golem, our mining golem, but still with that VTOL glory and all, to show what it's like to fly decoupled around planets and moons, and how it varies depending on it being a main planet like Hurston or Microtech versus a moon, and how thick that moon's atmosphere might be. Daymar's a pretty good spot to practice. So another one of those benefits to decoupled flight that I mentioned in the first video, which if you haven't seen it, go check it out, link in the description as well as on the channel just before this one. You have the ability to continue in a given direction without having to be hands-on your controls. So when it comes to, finding good spots to mine or things to do on planets and moons, typically if you want to be safe, you want to avoid points of interest, you want to avoid places where you might have players that will grief you or kill you or troll you or whatever and have more of a peaceful time. And the decoupled flight model allows you to better get to those places without it being quite as labor intensive to fly the ship there. As an example, we don't have to, go from up here all the way down. Granted, at this speed, it wouldn't take too long. You can go make a snack, grab a cup of coffee or something while your ship continues to fly, which is nice. Or you can do a partial jump where we go into quantum to get a lot closer, and then you actually need to cut your engines to kill the quantum when you're in planetary quantum mode. So you were kind of low now. I'm going to cut my engines off. Actually, I'm just going to kill my whole ship, because apparently just cutting your engines isn't enough, because I noticed it didn't respond. So you might have to power your ship off to break it. So see how we're 46 kilometers away from that, and now I will turn my engines back on, change directions, and head down over here. Just pointing that velocity indicator towards the moon, and then while you're flying down, while you're lowering your altitude, you can kind of check around to see how close you are to stuff. This is one of the benefits. Now know that you are heading straight towards the moon, so it's important to remember your speed. Know how fast you're going. We're doing over 700 meters per second as you're doing this. We're not in Atmo yet. We have not started slowing down. We don't have our altimeter. It is pretty low on this planet, though, or on this moon, sorry. So now that we're going to go into VTOL mode to use that control authority to get our velocity indicator back up over the horizon. And now we're safe as we're down around 2 kilometers above Daymar's surface. So these are just more of the ways that you can utilize the thrusters on your ship and decoupled flight to more quickly move around these areas. Now, you are going to naturally slow down on this moon, but you can move very fast because there is very little atmospheric restriction or drag pushing against your ship. So it will kind of cause you to slow down, but it's also important because depending on the ship you're in, if you're big enough, if your wingspan's big enough, or you just put yourself at a weird angle, even changing direction will start to change how the atmosphere is affecting you and maybe put you down toward the deck. See, we, I think, are actually descending now. We're still clear on our velocity indicator. It's still pointing above the horizon. But if you are low enough and you're trying to skim a mountain, having fun doing some low flybys, changing your nose direction too much could actually cause that velocity indicator to drop down to the deck when you're doing something like this, when you're tossing yourself around. Thicker atmospheres, like on main planets, are going to impact you a lot more than like a moon would. But this is also, part of the trick to how people make it look like they're really cool when they're flying, because you're wondering how they're having such good control authority, but all they're doing is putting that velocity indicator around where it's not going to hit anything, and then making it look fancy by doing all this stuff, or going in the outside view and making you wonder, how the hell are they flying like that? What's going on? They're like a flight master. No, they just are getting pretty good at decoupled flight, and it makes everything look cool. Now, getting to a more practical demonstration here, we're going to go back to those options I showed you in video 1 that we didn't actually touch on, which is wind and gravity compensation. Now, wind comp's not going to be as obvious out here because it is not a super windy spot, but like the moons around Microtech, Euterp, Clio, and Calliope and all, that is where you will feel a lot of the wind issue. But if we turn these off, gotta come back out here quickly. These might also be configuration settings. Yeah, there they are. Well, yep. All right, cool. That's actually where it's affecting this ship in particular. The other one is default gravity compensation on and off. So you can actually just leave those on, and you can mess with how your ship gets affected here. Wind compensation seems to only be a thing in the options menu, but gravity comp is on here. Now I will disable that again. So you'll notice we start to fall, and you actually need to apply thrust either forward or up to keep yourself from going down. You'll notice the velocity indicator keeps dropping down to the deck. Back in the earlier days, this is how I flew. My buddies in the VTI group actually called it going Deadwake mode because most people would just go coupled flight when they're on planets, because why bother with your ship constantly being pulled down to the deck? I got pretty good at keeping that velocity indicator level even with gravity. I'm just applying the just slightest upward strafe on my left stick to keep my ship above the ground as it wants to keep on falling, and got pretty good at just kind of feeling the ship, which is a lot of decoupled flight. Also looking at my retrograde indicator. If retrograde indicator is going up, that means prograde's going down and I'm approaching the deck. So pointing retrograde down, make sure you know you're going up, especially in a mountainous area like this. So this could be a fun way to practice how your ship kind of falls and feels, you know, that way you can get a better sort of instinctive bond with how a ship operates in decoupled mode. But honestly, you can just go back into your configuration settings up here on your ship. It's right under flight. Just turn gravity compensation on, and now your thrusters will always compensate for that gravity. And I'm fine with that because I would imagine the year 2956, we might not have cameras around our ships, but at least our thrusters are smart enough to compensate automatically for wind and gravitational pull. I can get behind the level of avionics that requires. The last thing we will actually look at real quick is a practical measure of using, well, looks like when I powered down, my radar turned off. Sometimes that happens. If your stuff isn't working, just take a look at your power allocations. Because, you know, if your ping isn't working, your scanners aren't pulling stuff up, your radar probably just turned off. Little fun pro tip. All right, we're going to scan for some rocks, and I'm just going to show you why it's so much better to fly in decoupled when you're mining or doing salvage or anything else, because you can actually move so much faster in your ship. And I'll often stay in nav mode until it's time to crack a rock. Then I'll go SEM to get my shields up. But I pretty much live in nav because nav with decoupled is just so much better. So there we go. There's a deposit there. I'm going to go VTOL and actually hockey stop to put my velocity vector this way. And then I can go VTOL again, hit that space brake to slow down right over top of this deposit to begin working. More benefits of utilizing your decoupled mode. Now I can also throw my speed limiter down to 0 to hold my ship in place. I don't have to worry about going into coupled flight mode or anything. Now I am rock solid right on top of this beautiful Terranite titanium rock. I'm going to take a second to mine this because I can't just leave this here, being the kind of person I am. Hold on. Deadwake's got to get to work real quick. Yeah, I know it says impossible, but the double Ryger C3 attachments to the Golem's Pitman head are doing wonders here. So yeah, we'll break this, suck it up, and then I'll give some maybe closing advice on atmospheric flight in decoupled mode. All right, we filled up on Terranite and titanium. Unexpected, but gotta take opportunities where you can, right? And then once we spool up, we get full boost authority forward. But I definitely recommend getting some time flying around, throwing yourself around on these planets and moons to master this decoupled flight, really locking into where you're putting velocity indicator, because that's where your ship is going. Outside of that, you got to understand your wingspans, the angles of your ship, kind of getting to know the bubble of it, kind of like driving a car, because if you come down sideways too much, if you've got larger wings, you know, that's going to end very poorly. I've done that one too many times, having fun in really fast ships, flying low. Did that with Devil Dock yesterday. It was a blast until a wing clipped a rock on Selland, and I went kaboom. But that is how you learn. That's also going to dovetail into another point that I should have brought up in the first video, which is if you're going to practice your decoupled flight and get a little bit more risky, set your spawn at the closest station. We're here at Daymar, so Seraphim, or Grim Hex if you're feeling a little frisky. I have my set to Corel 1, which is a little further away, but still, it's a quick drive out here, quick fly out here, sorry. And I'm a bit more attuned and accustomed to flying in decoupled mode. Now, the Prospector and the Mole can also use their VTOL authority on these moons and all as well, but there's nothing quite like flying the Golem out here. It's just incredibly fun to do those hockey stops using those boosters. Changing direction. Gotta love it, man. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed part 2 of this video. Part 3 is coming out featuring some stuff in space combat around the Rings of Yellow with all those asteroids getting a little bit more advanced. So I will see you over there. Take care, guys.
Landing gear down. Landing complete. Have a pleasant stay.
I thought you guys might like to see that at the end there.